Have you ever seen those memes where it's like if you talk to yourself, it means you have a mental disorder or something along those lines? I've seen a million of them. And I always stop and think, like, do I? Do I maybe have a mental illness? I do sometimes wonder why our culture looks down upon people who talk to themselves. They're considered very eccentric. They're kind of weird, awkward. They keep to themselves a lot. I think it's so healthy to talk to ourselves. I talk to myself constantly. I'm practically talking to myself right now. There are so many instances in my life where I found talking myself through something can have so much benefit. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about why we should be talking to ourselves more. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bridget. On this channel, I talk a lot about social anxiety, introverts, general anxiety, the books I'm reading. So if any of that interests you, make sure to check out some of my other videos as well. So that being said, let's get into the video. One of the first reasons why talking to ourselves can be so beneficial is the fact that it can boost cognitive performance. I, for one, have found this to be true during my schooling years. High school, college, when I'm studying, trying to memorize things in hopes to perform well for an exam, when I'm looking over my notes, when I'm doing flashcards, I'm saying these things out loud. A lot of us do this. In order to sear this content in our brain. When we say it out loud, we remember it better, and therefore we perform better. I do this when I'm reading directions. Have you ever ordered some piece of furniture on Amazon and look at the directions, you read them over, and then you look at all the pieces and you're like, I still don't know what the heck I'm doing. A lot of the times I have to slow down, read the directions out loud, and all of a sudden it clicks. Everything makes sense when I read it out loud. I don't know what it is, but there is something about speaking the words out loud that helps me perform the task. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. But sometimes when we're doing this kind of stuff, we don't necessarily link it to, oh, I frequently talk to myself. This is almost human nature to us. Next thing, self-encouragement. Anytime I'm encouraging myself out loud, I'm always going to perform better. I'm always going to work harder. I see this when I'm trying to complete a hard workout. Saying those words out loud, you can do it. One more time. Push yourself. You can do it. You got this. When I say that out loud versus when I'm trying to push myself in my head, it makes a huge difference. Athletes do this before a big game. Speakers do this before a big speech. When we're actually saying the words out loud when we hype ourselves up, it leads to us performing better. It leads to us focusing better. The next thing I want to talk about has a lot to do with my social anxiety journey. So if any of you out there struggle with social anxiety, you know someone who struggles with social anxiety, make sure you stick around for this part. I've talked about this briefly on my channel before when I've mentioned my social anxiety struggles, and I talk about my story and how I overcame it, which if you would like to check that out, I'll leave a video up here. A lot of the times before a big event, I used to talk to myself a lot. I don't do it as much now as I did before, but sometimes I still find myself going back to it because it's so useful. If I was going to a big event, if I was going to a party, if I was going to meet anyone, if I was going to do something alone, especially in the beginning when I was really struggling, and I knew I was going to have a conversation with somebody, I would physically have that conversation beforehand. I would practice what I was going to say. I would listen to how my voice was going to sound. Sometimes I would even do this in the mirror to watch myself do hand gestures or, examine what my body language was looking like or what it would look like to other people. And the act of performing that task just by myself, but using the words out loud, made doing it in real life so much easier, right? Because it was as if I already had the conversation. And this is not just something that I found to be effective, but a lot of other people who struggle with social anxiety have found this to be effective too. And it's kind of similar to visualization. When we visualize ourselves doing something beforehand, we're more likely to be able to do that task. And so I kind of think of it like that. If I have the conversation beforehand, if I practice what I'm going to say, I'm more likely to follow through or just be better at having that conversation when it comes time to do so. So that's just a tip for those of you who struggle with social anxiety. Another thing that talking to ourselves also helps us do is increasing our focus. Now, going back to the whole workout thing, just because it's such an easy thing to compare to when you're doing yoga, you're trying to focus on the pose. Sometimes I find even during a yoga class, like I will actually say the words out loud to myself. I'll tell myself to just hold steady. I'll tell myself to count down, to focus on a particular object, just look at that. Do whatever I need to do to help me focus on the task at hand. I know this is a bad example, but sometimes when I'm driving and I'm like really tired or there's really bad weather and I really just need to focus on the road, I'll talk to myself out loud. I'll do anything I can to just try to focus on what I'm trying to do. The last one I want to mention is probably the most helpful one that I found, and it's reducing stress. As an introvert, I'm often thinking about past conversations I've had, instances where, I should have said something else, but I said this instead, instances where I should have gone to an event, but I didn't, instances where I thought someone was talking about me, but they weren't, all kinds of things. Whenever I mess up, I'm probably thinking about it. Thinking about it for days, weeks, months, doesn't matter. On the other hand, I'm also thinking about situations where maybe not necessarily I might mess up, but just situations where there's a lot of pressure, or I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself that's going to happen in the future. And I'm stressing myself out over it. But a lot of the times when I'm kind of spiraling in my head, I find that when I have a conversation with myself, which sounds kind of crazy, when I have a conversation with myself where I'm kind of just being the devil's advocate to my own thoughts. So if I have a thought that, I'll say, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that, I'll physically say out loud, but you said it. And they're probably not thinking about it as much as you are. You're fine, they're not thinking about it. And I'll do this with things that are going to happen in the future. I'll say something like, you might mess up, and that's okay. It's probably not going to be as bad as you think. Just focus on what's happening right now. And I'll keep saying this and trying to walk myself out of that rabbit hole and into the present moment. And it's probably one of the biggest things that helps me reduce that stress. Because a lot of the times that stress that we create in our head, it's really hard to come out of if we're not actually sifting through those thoughts. So whether you're talking out loud with yourself, or you're writing it down, or you're talking to somebody else about it, as long as we're kind of being a little bit realistic, I guess. Sometimes when I actually say those things out loud, or I write it out, or I talk to someone about it, it's like, why are you making such a big deal out of this, And so when you don't have someone around to listen to you talk your ear off, or you don't feel like writing it out, talking to yourself, it's so helpful. So these are the things that I found talking to myself can be helpful with. There's probably a bunch more, but I think the main point of this video is that we really need to stop looking down on people who talk to themselves. They're not crazy, they're normal. And I bet a lot of you watching this video probably already talk to yourself, but would probably never say it out loud. You'd probably never admit to a crowded room that you talk to yourself. And if we actually realize the benefits that it could have, and how many successful people actually do talk to themselves, then maybe we wouldn't be making it such a big deal. So watch this video again and again if you have to, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful and useful as always, and I will see you next time.